Welcome, everyone. You are in the right spot if you're looking for the resume workshop where we talk about writing effective content. My name is Kelly Coughlan. I am the Senior Career Manager here at the Office of Career Services within the Costello College of Business. I'm here with Rani today from Marriott, and I will let her go ahead and introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today. I'm Rani. As Kelly said, I'm recovering from the flu, but so I'm here. If you can't understand me, please let me know. I am our lead recruiter on the university recruitment team. I focus on recruitment from universities in the Mid-Atlantic, which is DC, Maryland, and Virginia for us. And I go to different campuses to talk about opportunities at Marriott. And for a few of our early careers programs, help guide applicants through the process. So I've been on both sides where, of course, I've applied to jobs, but in my role now, it is my job to look at your resumes and to see if you may be a fit for the opportunities that we have. So I'm excited to be here with you all today, and I know this is going to be a great presentation.
Yeah, Ronnie, if you want to give us just like maybe a taste of like what some of those entry level positions are that you tend to recruit for.
Absolutely. So we are Marriott International. We're the world's largest travel company. We have hotels all over the country and all over the world. So we have two internship programs and a full-time management development program for post-graduation. For our internships, we're looking for those looking to go into hotel operations, customer service focused roles in our hotels. And we have that through our hotel internship program. We have our second program, which is our corporate internship program, where we're looking for students to come in and intern in the summer at our corporate offices in a variety of business functions from information technology, marketing, finance, operations, so many more. I'm blanking on all of our departments, but more of the business side. And I help screen applicants for those programs. And then our full-time management development program is for those that are currently seniors, and that would be looking for a management position in our hotels. Kind of runs the gamut all the way from our customer service roles to our corporate opportunities.
Perfect. Yeah, I think one of the things that sometimes we miss is,
Mhm.
people get tunnel vision and they see Marriott and they're like, well, I'm not really interested in hospitality. So that's not my focus or my concentration, not realizing that this is a major corporation with all levels, like you're talking about, especially with the corporate position. Within our business school, obviously, we have finance and we have IT, data analytics and that kind of piece of things. And as you just said, this is a major company that has all different types of corporate roles. So if you see Marriott at future career fairs or out and about, don't get that tunnel vision and pass them by. So we're going to talk about how to write an effective resume. There is another workshop you can attend that's on basics and formatting. We're not going to focus so much. We'll briefly review some of that. And then, of course, we have our recruiter right here for some questions of the good, bad, and the ugly. What to include, what not to include, what will catch their eye in a good way and maybe not so much. So we're going to talk briefly about just a quick format review, like I mentioned, talking about the keywords, how we identify keywords from a job announcement, why they're so important to touch on, how we write details targeted for that specific role, and kind of the do's and don'ts when it comes to AI, right? And I'm sure, Ronnie, you've seen everything and in between. So when we get to that section, I'm sure there'll be a lot of good conversation there. So just for formatting review's sake, what we advise for our students is that name is nice and bold, centered on top. It should be the largest thing on your resume, and then just followed by some brief contact information. We don't have to tell everybody our personal address. Just kind of that city and state is enough. Phone number, email, and then I always advise putting that LinkedIn profile at the top because you are going to get to the point where you are running out of space. And you want to kind of showcase to the employer you're more than what's on this piece of paper, and your LinkedIn profile is a great opportunity to do that. The other thing I always advise people, and we have a whole separate class on LinkedIn, and I can talk your ear off all about it, but on LinkedIn, you get to tell the employer more information that isn't necessarily going to appear on your resume. It's not quite as targeted because I'm sure you're going for more than just kind of this targeted keywords from this particular job announcement. And there's no such limitation on there. But the other thing I always say is the only people who are going to see your resume are the people you submit it to. But every recruiter, and back me up, Ronnie, in the
Mhm.
world can see your
Yeah.
LinkedIn profile. So you spend all this time making your resume look gorgeous, and then your LinkedIn looks like a hot mess. Recruiters notice. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yes. And so yeah, remembering to update your LinkedIn is definitely important. I know it's one of those things that's easy to forget.
Yeah,
Spot
especially if they
on.
don't match, right? Like what's on the
Hmm.
resume is completely different than what's on the LinkedIn.
Yep.
I've certainly seen that with our own candidates as well. So we just talk about, make Ronnie's job easier, right? Set up with a nice summary and bullet point. What are your key qualifications for this role? Do not make her read 35 bullet points in your resume to see if you're a good fit because something will likely get missed, right? That is, what is it, Ronnie? Like 5 to 7 seconds scanning,
Yep.
scanning, scanning, right? Seeing if you're a good fit. I got hundreds and hundreds of these to look through, assuming they even made it through an applicant tracking system. So
Yep.
just spell it out. Give me the Cliffs Notes right at the top and say, here's why I'm a great fit, right? And
Yep.
that skills section that you see right under the summary, which is those lovely bullet points, this can be a combination of what I call exactly what you're looking for. And oh, by the way, okay, so you're looking for somebody who is well versed in risk analysis and QuickBooks and Excel, and that's great. But did I mention I'm a certified payroll professional? Did I mention I'm bilingual in English and Spanish? So, what are the pieces that are exactly what they're looking for, and what's helping you stand apart from other people that not everybody's going to have on their resume, right? Because you're going to have to assume everyone applying meets the bare minimum, qualifications. So your job isn't to do the same, it is to stand apart. We're going into education, nice and clear, bold on top. What is that degree? When do you expect to finish it if you haven't yet? You got a GPA above a 3.0, go ahead and put that on there. If you find when you're applying for jobs that your coursework is one of your biggest qualifiers, maybe you haven't worked a ton in the biz, that's fine. But then go into detail in that coursework and use that as maybe one of your biggest qualifiers. And don't list the course code. That means nothing to those on the outside. Tell me the name of the class and don't just recap what was covered in the class because everybody else who completed the same program can do the same thing, right? Tell me a case study you did. Tell me about a research paper you did. Tell me about a time you stood in front of the class and created a beautiful PowerPoint, showcasing your understanding of this material and your speaking skills and all that kind of good stuff, incorporating the pieces that you learned in that class, right? And then we go into the experience section, which is really what we're going to focus on today, is how are we customizing these resumes for each job position, as well as going into creating these gorgeous star statements, as we call them. And then part of that experience can also be volunteer, extracurricular, all that kind of good stuff. Anything to add, Ronnie, to that before we move on?
No, I think this format that you have at George Mason is really great. Good to be creative, but you don't need to be creative in your resume necessarily. Like this really does highlight everything that we're looking for, and that's the most important. So I know you're going to go more into depth into the different areas and how to highlight things.
So we talk about gaining credentials and experience. What can you include in that experience section? I'm going to throw a couple resources at you. We're going to take a break from the PowerPoint. I'm going to go live on some of these resources, but just remember that experience section is not called full-time paid experience. Okay. So what employers are looking for, Ronnie, can back me up. I'm looking for the knowledge and the skill set. And whether you did that at 28 hours a week or 40 hours a week or whatever, or whether you were in a leadership role with, the accounting association or the marketing association on campus, I want to see the skills that you were using because that's the piece that's most important. Would you agree?
Absolutely, yes. And experience can come in any of those forms. So
Yep.
perfect.
So
Yeah.
internships, volunteer work, we just mentioned campus clubs, course projects I referenced earlier. We have what I call is like the best kept secret at Mason, and that is a platform called Forage. This is a free platform for students where you can gain on the job skills in a virtual setting at your own pace, where you can actually do these job simulations for huge companies on your own time. And each one of them takes less than a day, you guys. Or should be popped up on your screen right now. And you can see this little explore button up top and these job simulations. We want to click all. And Ronnie, back me up, but AI, one of the hot topics around here, right? So we
Yep.
can do some technology courses and AI courses and all those things. But check this out. So here are all sorts of free job simulations you can do for huge companies. Anybody ever heard of Bank of America or Goldman Sachs or Wells Fargo, right? Here are some wonderful AI courses. And as you can see, any one of these, less than a day to complete. And there's different levels. There's introductory, intermediate, and actually advanced. These all look like they are going up to intermediate, so shouldn't be a problem there. And what's really kind of cool is you can, tells you this company's even hiring now. We click on one of these. It tells you why you would want to complete this. It tells you what you're going to get out of it. Here's the scenario. Here's each task, what you're going to learn, what you're going to do. And at the end, it even gives you a lovely blurb for your resume, which we're talking about right now. And then when you get to an interview, if the old resume is looking a little bare, especially in terms of skills that the employer is looking for, here is a really great way in a short amount of time to pick some of that up. Okay. Another opportunity would be using a resource called Parker Dewey, which I will send to you guys afterwards. It's not much to look at, but it is a resource where you can actually do micro internships and that are paid. So if, it's not necessarily like a 6-month, 3-month internship program. They are projects where you can gain experience in a short amount of time and get paid for it. And you apply for them like any other any other internship, but they are micro internships and they look fabulous on a resume. So I will send that to y'all as well. So we talked briefly about this already with those course projects. Don't talk about the course number. That means nothing to those. Don't just recap that description, as I mentioned. Don't just state what was covered in the class. Talk about the course title, what projects, what skills and strengths did you utilize? How can you showcase that you understood the material? Did you give a presentation? All that kind of good stuff. Case studies, research reports, all that looks great. So here's some good examples of that coursework and project section where don't do this with MIS 341, which kind of means nothing and takes up space. Learn the adoption application benefits, deployment economics, models, risks, services, strategy, right? Total snooze fest there, and also doesn't stand out because it's the same thing everybody else learned, right? So if we want to take out that MIS 341, just call it Cloud Computing Essentials and make those into lovely accomplishment statements, starting with developed and delivered a cloud computing case study, evaluating adoption strategy, service models, cost structures, and risk considerations from a business and managerial perspective, producing strategic recommendations that balance scalability, security, and ROI. Even better is this last one because it throws in a lovely quantifier. Designed and presented a PowerPoint to 50 plus students explaining cloud computing principles, service models, and business value, demonstrating strong communication skills.
Especially, yeah, no need to put the name of the course, and then I'm loving the bottom example and using the PowerPoint presentation, conducting a market and value analysis because that's really real world experience. You've just done it in a class. So this is definitely something to pay attention to if you're adding these onto your resume. And the other thing I think you mentioned this is if you do have a lot of work experience, then maybe you don't need to put this on or put this as in depth, but still something to add if it's relevant to the job you're applying to.
Yeah, and what employer, even if, let's say the posting that Ronnie didn't include PowerPoint presentations or public speaking, boy, would that be a bonus, to throw in there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, convey your passion and link your strengths to measurable results, which was that nice 50 plus quantifier you saw in the last example. Employers and interviewers love concrete data. Is that true?
Absolutely. Yeah, I 100% it shows us the scale and the scope, and that helps us so that we can compare that to what we do and see is that similar? Is it a good start and something that we can build on? That's something that can be really helpful.
Yeah, and as we've already talked about here with the experience and significant course projects and forage and all the things there, for required information, kind of what we want in that section is going to be your job title, where it was, location, dates, and then again, in accomplishment format, bullet point format, something a little like this. This has some gorgeous quantifiers. Notice how those stand right out. Provided project management for ABC rollout effectively. And what do I see here? Some nice skills and strengths. It's like the trifecta of skills and strengths. And then as a bonus, we have a nice quantifier in there. Effectively communicated and built relationships and organizational leadership to ensure programs were delivered in a timely manner and aligned with the company's mission, managed complex projects. Here we have Excel, PowerPoint, and Google Suite. Developed and facilitated trainings for 100 plus, Microsoft Office. See how every one of these bullet points versus an accomplishment. Ronnie, I'm sure you see this all the time when it's basically somebody just rehashing their job announcement, that, their job description, what they're supposed to be working on versus kind of the accomplishment. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think anybody can, not any, I mean, we can all get jobs and show up and do the expectation of our job, but when we're interviewing somebody, we want to see what impact you'll have with us. So I always say when you have a work experience, think about what was the impact of what I did. So if you can figure out a way to quantify a result or share what the results were of the work you did, that always shows that extra mile. It shows us that not only did you come and perform your job, which is of course important, but that you left an impact. And it's sometimes you don't know the impact, right? If you're an intern, you're there for a short amount of time, and that's okay. Like we understand you might be working on things where you're not there to see the end result. But if there is a situation where you did or you're beginning to see a result before you leave, finding a way to note that can be really impactful.
On our next slide here, we talk about some best practices for that experience section and those bullet points that you're looking at. We don't use first person, so you don't say, I did this, I did that. It is just starting out with managed this, right? Effectively communicated, as you saw in the last one. General rule of thumb, 3 to 5 bullet points, per experience. And sometimes that changes depending on this experience isn't quite as relevant as this one. Doesn't mean I necessarily have to chop it off, but maybe I don't need to go into quite as much detail under some of those less relevant jobs. As you see on the third bullet point here, bullets include most relevant skills and qualities you want to share, and should include key words from that job announcement. Bullets are not complete sentences necessarily. You want to use strong action verbs. In our previous page here, you can see provided project management, effectively communicated, managed, developed, facilitated, coordinated, right? Those are the types of strong action verbs that we want to be starting our bullet points with, our accomplishment statements. And then, of course, prove it. What was, don't just tell me what you did, but like, what was the result? How did this help? I call it the so what, right? Read each bullet point on your resume and ask yourself, so what? Why would the employer care? This goes into sort of those key words where maybe they won't. Maybe we should scrap this sentence altogether, or maybe there's some key words from the job announcement that I could be incorporating into this bullet point so that they would care. Here's just a far out example, but I used to work with veterans in the military who were on their next career path, and they were going to be, transferring to the civilian side of things. So they would have these gorgeous accomplishment statements that, of course, you and I can't even imagine, but not always relevant. So let's say I want to be a business analyst with Marriott, and I have on my resume hauled 50 tons of dirt across the desert in wartime conditions. And Ronnie's going, that's really cool. And what an interesting fact. That has nothing to do with being this business analyst. However, what if there was something in Ronnie's job description that said must perform well under pressure, right? And then I can change that bullet point and say performs well under pressure, hauled 50 tons of dirt across the desert in wartime. Okay, if I can do that and keep my cool and perform well under pressure, now it makes sense why I brought that seemingly irrelevant story up and how it relates to that particular job that business analyst job posting. Sometimes you won't be able to work in the keyword. And it doesn't make any sense to bring up this particular bullet point. What I see a lot was when people have worked in customer service and they're like, I just saw this yesterday or a couple of days ago where it was like using a blender and, being able to make drinks or whatever it is. And it's like, okay, well, I don't need your blender skills necessarily for this corporate job, but I do need your memory recall. I do need your attention to detail. So maybe you can work in some of that piece of it rather than the focus on, how well you can blend a frappuccino or something like that. Anything to add there, Ryan? I'm sure you've seen it all
Yeah.
on resumes.
Yeah, absolutely. You're spot on. The hardest part about making a resume is that for every job you apply to, your resume probably should look a little different. And that's okay as long as, you're being truthful about the experiences you had, but really tailoring that resume to the job you're applying to. So it might mean doing some research on the company, seeing what are other positions that they're looking for too. So it kind of gives you an idea of what they're hiring for.
And you can tell when somebody's just using their generic resume that they have created
Mhm.
for every single company because you read it and you say, well, how does this relate? How this relates to this position? Like, so for example, we were hiring interns and we're hiring a peer career advisor. And we would have IT students applying, and there's a way that there's some transferable skills there that are lovely. But if you don't tell me how those skills relate or that you're meeting anything that was in this job announcement, I can't figure out why you bothered to send in your resume. And it shows you that you don't care enough. You don't put attention to detail. You don't feel passionate enough about this role to tweak it and make it customized for this particular position, right?
Absolutely. I also think it's about the industry you apply to. So I'll talk about hospitality as, a whole. As I said, we have our corporate internship program, which is the business functions, right? It's marketing, it's IT, it's um, finance, all of that. But that doesn't mean that you should take off any hospitality experience. Like if you've worked in a restaurant or you've worked in retail, that's very relevant because everything we do at our corporate office is geared towards having our customers' intentions in mind and helps to support our customer experience. So that's one example where if I see a resume, there isn't restaurant experience listed, but then they get to an interview and they're like, oh yeah, I was a server for 3 years during college. And my first question is always like, why isn't it on your resume? That would have, maybe it would have gotten you through faster, or we would have found a different position that maybe is even more fitted to you because of that. So, researching the industry you're applying to is also important to make sure all of the experience you have that's relevant to that industry is highlighted.
I'm so glad to hear you say that because
Yeah.
that comes up a lot. We obviously have a lot of students who do have that service industry experience. They worked at Target, they worked at Safeway, they worked as a bartender, they were a waitress, whatever it is. And they tend to downplay it or talk about the tasks that they were doing rather than those wonderful transferable skills that would really pertain well, let's say, to hospitality. Can you calm somebody down who's angry?
Mhm.
Everybody who comes into that restaurant is not excited or they're having the best day of their life, right? So if you have conflict resolution skills and communication skills, and you can adapt based on what people's needs are or the communication style that they're using, boy, would you stand apart because that is relevant in any job that you are going to. You need to communicate with other people effectively and adapt. And
Absolutely.
those are wonderful skills that you really do pick up in those types of roles, right?
Yeah, you should definitely highlight any hospitality experience for any job, I would say. And obviously, it depends on how much you go into it, right? But as you were saying, it highlights working with people, it highlights conflict resolution, thinking on your feet, adaptability, and shows professional work experience. So even to you, if you're like, oh, this is just my part-time job in school, so I can have some money to go out to eat or whatever, you do in college, it's good to still highlight. So
Yep. And there's effective ways to do it. So we're certainly here to help you
absolutely.
with that. I use an example, I talked about briefly the difference between a job duty and an accomplishment, right? So we just talked about waitressing, and I have seen this on a resume before, waited on tables and served food. That is factually correct. Yes, you did. But that is the duty. That is not the accomplishment. And as we talked about, each one of these bullet points is an opportunity to work in the skills and the strengths it took to accomplish that task, and then any quantifiers. So the accomplishment version would be utilize strong communication skills, excellent order recall, and multitasking while serving 300 plus people a day, achieving a 99% guest satisfaction score, right? Or keeping your cool and providing conflict management to ensure guest satisfaction or whatever it is. It's really easy to keep your cool with one person a day. It is not easy to keep your cool and use all these skills with 300 plus people a day, right? And if you're working in a busier restaurant or whatever, you are easily seeing that many people. So clearly you can see the difference between a job duty and an accomplishment and which one would stand out more to a recruiter, right, Ronnie?
Yeah. And as you start to have more experiences too, space on your resume starts to feel very limited. And so I always say, what's something that we don't know about the job from the job title? So, an example, if you write that you're a restaurant server, I know that the expectation is that you're serving tables and food, right? So, what's something about that job that you have that I didn't know? So, I wouldn't know just reading that you served over 300 people a day and that you achieved that score. So, another way to look at kind of as you're writing your resume.
Yeah, I like that. So we want to take a moment here for a brief activity, some examples of job duties that we could be turning into accomplishments for a resume. Maintained a positive attitude while dealing with negative customers. Ensure cleanliness of kitchen. I've absolutely seen this on a resume. Ensure cleanliness of kitchen and assisted with stocking inventory, and then managed cash transactions. So if everybody wants to take a moment, and you're welcome to pop it in the chat as far as how would we convert that from a job duty statement, as you can clearly see, to an accomplishment. So I'll give you a couple seconds to complete that. All right. I see one that says maintained and exceeded the standard of cleanliness in the kitchen according to health code standards. That is definitely better. So kind of showing, I would even say that showcases attention to detail and work ethic. Utilize attention to detail while exceeding the standard of cleanliness in the kitchen according to health code standards or something like that. Oversaw cash transactions and reconciliations, ensuring accurate reporting and secure handling of funds. Ooh, that's a good one. Managed dissatisfied customers and worked with them to reach compromise to better serve said customers, right? So I would say utilized effective conflict management with 30 plus customers a day to ensure a positive experience or to better serve customers or to reach compromise. I like that. You got communication skills you can add in there as well. Adaptability, again, conflict management, conflict resolution, all that kind of great stuff gets highlighted in those types of roles. So moving on here, identifying keywords. This is a big one, right, Ronnie? Like, again, goes to I can tell when you're doing a generic resume that you're just dealing it out like a deck of cards and it is not specific to this role, this position. So how do we figure out what in the heck is this employer looking for? So there's a couple different ways we can go about this. One, if it has a lovely job description that's wonderfully detailed, we can look at that and try to parse out the keywords. This is actually where AI can be really useful, is you can pop that job announcement into an AI tool and say, what are the keywords that this, position holds basically, and how can I incorporate those? You can decide which ones pertain to you and how you could work those into your accomplishment statements. Sometimes we're met with a really vague job description, right? This happens a lot with intern roles because they're not looking for 15 years experience in this, and this, right? They're looking for a business student who's a junior, has some communication skills and awareness of Microsoft Office, and that's what you get. And now you have to try and create this targeted resume specifically for that role when you don't have a ton to go off of. So one of the ways, and Ronnie kind of alluded to this earlier, of what skills do you think would be important for this job? And if you're kind of at a loss, you can use AI tools in this instance and say, for these types of roles, give me 20 skills that would be really helpful, right? Tell me 20 skills that tend to be used in this role. And then you can look at those skills and figure out which ones of these do you possess and how could you work them into your resume? What does the employer want to see? What does that wish list look like? Remember, we can incorporate exactly what they're looking for in what I call the oh, by the way, right? We saw it in that initial skills section where it was, you might be looking for Microsoft Excel, which I'm going to list up here, but oh, by the way, I'm bilingual in English and Spanish. I'm not, but I wish I was. Remember, that section can include exactly what the employer is looking for and what do you have to offer that's special and significant that stands apart, that you think they would care about. Okay. And again, as I mentioned, this is an appropriate use of AI to try and parse out and figure out those keywords. Ronnie, anything to add
Yeah.
there?
No, I think that's exactly right. Usually job descriptions are pretty detailed in what they're going to be expecting from the role. So
Yeah, especially
definitely reference
as you
that.
get farther into your career, right?
Yep.
Then you get kind of even more detailed because they're actually looking for concrete experience that you already have. Some of the more entry level ones, can be a little more vague. So we want to review the job announcement, use your favorite AI tool to figure out what those keywords might be, rewrite this job duty to create an accomplishment statement. So what I mean by that, look at each bullet point, and this is true for every job you will ever apply for. Look at each bullet point that is on that job announcement and be able to answer the question, tell me of a time you did this, right? So if it says advanced Microsoft Office skills, Tableau, Power BI, SQL, whatever it is, tell me of a time you used advanced Microsoft Office. Tell me of a time you used SQL. Tell me of a time you used Power BI to solve a problem. That gives you the framework for what you should be putting as your accomplishment statements on your resume, and it better prepares you for the interview. Because when you get to that interview, those are the questions. Tell me of a time. The hardest interview I ever had was 15 tell me of a time questions. It was
Wow.
so exhausting. But again, I could figure out what they might be looking for. Again, if I'm looking at that job announcement and being able to tell them of a time. Again, on my resume, I don't tell the full story because I'm not going to put a paragraph per bullet point. I'm going to give them the gist. And then in the interview, I get to tell the full story and explain. Should you copy and paste from AI? Ronnie, give us the answer.
Yeah.
Hard no on that one, right? Because the employer can tell when everybody's responses sound very similar, and your job is to stand apart on your resume, not sound like everybody else. If you use AI to write a resume for you in minutes, it tells me you didn't put a lot of time and thought into applying to my job. And that's from a recruiter at Robert Half. There's a great article there, 3 resume red flags recruiters look out for. And the biggest red flag hiring managers look for in job candidates is an AI generated resume, according to the new research. So the employers can tell. Ronnie, have you seen this? I'm
Mhm.
sure you have seen an uptick of this.
Oh, absolutely. There are certain things that AI, it's something that's still evolving and growing, and you can tell when something has gone through AI and not been, checked or changed or adapted based on the actual person. Some ATS systems, applicant tracking systems, are catching this when you're applying, and they won't even move your application forward. Marriott isn't at a place that does that, but I've heard from other companies that there are ways that they can tell. So AI is a great tool to help, but it shouldn't be writing your resume for you.
Sure. And I've certainly heard from recruiters as well that they get to that interview point and then the recruiter's asking them questions from their resume and they're getting a
Yeah.
blank stare in response. Like, I said, I did what now? you know, or there's a huge discrepancy between how you talked on your resume versus how you speak in person, because this cannot possibly be the same person. So just know there is no perfect resume. Everybody has their own opinion when it comes to how to format and that kind of stuff. But these are the best practices. You don't just want to, again, cookie cutter template everything. You can use this as a general rule. You'll hear from an employer, oh, I hate when they start a resume with a paragraph up top. And then you hear from other recruiters, oh, I really like how that sets up what I'm going to expect from the rest of this resume. It kind of gives me a sampling, right? So as Ronnie and I both talked about, you are going to tweak this resume every time, right? Depending on what is in that job announcement. It shows that you're interested enough and care enough about getting that job, that you would actually want to spend that time and energy, and shows a work ethic, right? That you're willing to put the time and energy into customizing that. Keep your language and formatting concise, provide concrete evidence. We keep talking about that one. When in doubt, as I said, call it the so what. Is this relevant? Why would the employer care? How does this help the employer? What was the result? What transferable skills did I use or gain? And then you can create what's called a master resume to keep all this information in one place. That tends to be pages long, and I don't care if it's 15 bullet points for every job. You're never turning it into an employer. It's simply a placeholder so that when you create this gorgeous 1 to 2 page resume for the employer for that specific position, you can just copy and paste, a lot of those pieces in there. And some people treat their LinkedIn like that, like it's going to be kind of more of everything they've done because it's more broad, and then use some of that information for this, again, gorgeous tailored resume. Okay. So here we can look at just sort of a quick formatting exercise, 5 mistakes that this resume makes, and how can Mary fix these mistakes. So anybody want to take a peek at this and pop in our chat based on the conversation that we've just had? What is wrong with poor Mary's resume here, and how can we fix it? I don't need Mary's apartment number and her full home address, right? Burke, Virginia would be enough up there. The dates are not all the way on the right. So there's kind of a different formatting there. And also, Ryan, I'd be interested in your opinion, but I like sort of that clean look of give me all the dates on the right. Like I don't need to see your location over there on the right too. Just, bring
Right.
that over. So if it's United Rentals, bring Fairfax back over there, and
Yeah.
show me just the dates. So as from a, recruiter perspective, I can just glance through and see those dates and they stand out.
It looks a little busy over on the right side. So,
Yeah.
yep.
Okay, so we have addresses used, which we don't need to use that home address. Some of her experiences seem empty. List skills, but not any application of those skills. Absolutely. Also, I am not a fan, Ronnie. I don't know about you. I
Yeah.
don't love when people bury their skills at the bottom of the resume. I'm like, if these are your relevant skills, why is it the last thing I'm finding?
Yeah.
And some of these are not, I don't know what job this person's applying for. It looks like a management role because they've used an objective statement instead of a summary. Oh, and somebody said does not have her LinkedIn as well, right? And not only that, but check out that email address. Not the most professional looking email address I've ever seen. I see this a lot. Like I set up an email address in high school. I'm still using it and employers are noticing, but not in a good way. And I tend to want to put like Burke and number and stuff on one line. Like, let's not eat up the most real, valuable real estate on this resume with contact information. You can still have it on there, but there's a formatting way that we looked at in the beginning. They're lacking the details. So we want to switch objective, which is to get this job. You and I both know that. So that's a big waste of space, to a summary. What are you offering me? What skills and strengths do you have to offer me, the employer? Education, let's flip it around. I want to see the bachelor's degree on top and then the where. I feel like from an employer, I'm more interested in what you studied versus the where. And so can we swap that a little bit? We talked about only having dates on the right. The Associate of Arts does not line up with the date and location at Nova. We want to fix that. I see I statements in that first description under the United Rentals. Then they didn't use I statements for the first two, so that's not consistent. And then again, there's no bullet points. I'm only seeing one little sentence for stuff. I'm not seeing skills and strengths. I don't see any quantifiers. And then again, those skills being buried at the bottom, not my favorite. So applicant tracking systems, Ron, you just mentioned this. They are used by most companies. Can you kind of tell us how they work and what they scan for and what weeds people out?
Absolutely. So, some companies kind of use them in different ways, or they're using, AI more in that process than others. These are ways for us to track the applicants that come in. So when you apply to a job and you submit all of your materials, they come into a system for us to be able to reference those materials to see that you've applied. And depending on how sophisticated they are, we can see, like for ours, for example, when you apply to a job with us at Marriott, we can see if you've applied for other jobs at Marriott, either now, currently, or in the past, so that it kind of helps to show your whole journey with us. That's a very brief, big overview, but it's essentially how we track you as an applicant.
Is there something, I know that one of the big no-nos, certainly with like formatting, a lot of text boxes all over, that ain't going to make it through, that's going to
Yeah.
get flagged. The format that you saw at the beginning here that we share with our students is ATS friendly, but we'll see
Yep.
once where the whole left side is a column and it's got all your skills and your contact, and then the whole right, that does not fly. an
Yeah.
ATS system because it wants to read left to right, right?
Yep, yep. And I always say when you're submitting your resume or any document, to submit it in a PDF format is always the best because for ours, like if you have your Word document for your resume and you submit it, when I view it on my computer, I can make it work. But if I'm on my phone or my iPad that I have for work, it shows up different formatting. So you want to just make sure that it looks as you intend it to.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm so glad you brought that up because
yeah.
we obviously spend a lot of time with students making these look fabulous. And then when you send it off and it opens up and now it's 2 pages or 1.5 long because it screwed up this and that. So absolutely always kind of converting to that PDF for sure. This kind of just, as Ronnie kind of explained, how do employers use that ATS system? What is it weeding out? Again, if it can't find any keywords from that job announcement in your resume, you are not passing go and it's not even making it to the other end. So you need to be very cognizant of that. We talk about using AI responsibly and effectively. Don't just copy and paste. Of course, we talked about why that is not an effective strategy. But we also want to be real careful too. We don't put any PII, personal information, into those AI tools because they will remember forever. So don't be throwing your phone number and your email. It's okay if you wanted to take a peek at your resume and compare it to a job announcement to get some tidbits and information back, but don't be posting right from the top with your name and all that kind of stuff. From a plagiarism perspective, as we talked about, you want to stand apart in a positive way. And if everybody's using AI resumes for this particular job announcement Ronnie has out there, they all look the same and they're not standing apart. And it clearly we'll be able to tell that AI was used. So, as we mentioned towards the beginning, there are some great ways to use AI, helping you identify what those keywords are by pasting that job description. Help me incorporating some keywords into this job posting, creating a professional summary that'll appeal for this particular job. And again, we're never just straight up copying and pasting. We are tweaking it, making it our own language relevant to us. How can I better quantify my achievements? I have done it where, and I use this tool a lot with students where they come in and they're like, I don't understand what like numbers or quantifiers I could even put in this section. And I will copy and paste their bullet points and say, incorporate skills, strengths, and fake quantifiers into this. And not because we're going to ever put false data into our resume, but it'll give you an idea of what is a number you could be incorporating where, what is a percentage, what is a number, like all that kind of good stuff, just to give you an idea of what is the type of quantifier that you could be putting in here. And then, of course, you're going to make it accurate. Do you want to talk about our own AI tool that we just introduced this last fall called Costello Career AI, which you can use for your resume, you can use for your cover letter, you can use to practice interview skills. When you're going to the career fair in a couple of weeks, you can use actually maybe next week, it's 17, 18, 19. I'm staring at the flyer over my head. Practice your personal pitch, practice your elevator pitch, right? The Marriott folks have to listen to hundreds and hundreds of students all day long. Make it interesting, right? Don't go, I'm a business major. How are you standing apart? I'm a business major who's a bartender turned accountant. It's interesting, right? That's memorable. Tell me why. Tell me more. Scan here. I'll send you this PowerPoint when we're done. You can click on the link to gain access to this tool. It is a brand new tool that we've started offering as of fall and can be very useful. As we want to talk about, we are here to help you, preview that resume as many times as it needs to be done so that it looks fabulous for recruiters. So feel free to stop by anytime. What I find helps is if you read it out loud. Like it can give you insights that your brain is not going to catch if you are reading it to yourself. So check for grammar and spelling and typing errors. My common one is I'll type like is instead of it. And so it's not going to come up on a spell check, right? Because those are both words. I'm just using the wrong one in the wrong place or whatever. So again, reading it out loud can make a big difference. And people like Roni can see what you saved the document as. So if it's called Blue Resume Template 4, that's not super catchy, nor does it help the recruiting side. So you want first name, last name, resume. You can put the name of the company in there. The resume doesn't get you the job, but it can help you get your foot in the door, get you an interview. This is just one piece of the puzzle. You can have the most gorgeous resume ever. Competing against 300 other gorgeous resumes, it's not enough. And so we need to talk about other pieces of this puzzle like networking being a huge one, writing an effective cover letter, using LinkedIn and social media, which all factors into that networking piece, and negotiating and all that good stuff. So we have classes on all of that every single semester, over 40 workshops. And if you want help one-on-one, we are here for it. You can always set up an appointment with us virtually, in person. There is our information. A couple things you might want to scan right now is our Costello Career Collective, which is a LinkedIn group for where we have actually employers as well as alumni and students. You can post questions on there, hear directly from recruiters. For international students, we have a networking group and just started a international Costello student group as well. So you can reach out if you're interested in joining that, if it applies. And then there's our social media. This is our regular LinkedIn page where we will post upcoming events, stories of like highlighting alumni stories, things like that. In our Instagram page, which is a lot of fun, where we give tips and tricks on resume writing. Why would you want to follow us on our socials? Well, again, on Instagram, you'll hear some really good inside scoop and in a fun way format. And then LinkedIn, we will post jobs that are not posted on Handshake. Definitely make sure that you follow us on those platforms. Move that up there for a second. Rani, thanks for your
Yeah,
time. I really appreciate it,
thank
especially after you're
you.
battling the flu this week.
Yeah, no, it's been so nice to be here with you all. I am on LinkedIn as well, so please connect if you have other questions or things. My name, I think, is under my face, so I'd love to answer any questions you have.
Yeah, perfect.
Stay
All
connected.
right. Well, thanks for joining us. Happy Friday, everyone, and we will see you next time.
Thank you
Take care.
so much, Kelly.
Bye.
Have a good one. Bye.